The New Zealand First Party has its conference and annual general meeting in Dunedin this weekend. However, the party's leader, Winston Peters, is already in the city. He's speaking at a forestry conference. Otago Daily Times political editor Dene Mackenzie is a man with a pulse, and he also has his finger on the pulse of politics. He joins me now. And Dene, you are our very last ever interview guest.
I know, it's amazing. Thank you very much for inviting me.
You're welcome. I asked for Dene specifically to come in because he's such a lovely man.
Thank you.
Now, Winston Peters, he's already in town. Has he said anything controversial yet?
Well, I sort of got stuck into, not unexpectedly, the government's policy on forestry. So he's saying we don't get enough value out of the trees, we're selling too many logs. Not too many people are going to disagree with him on that. Trouble is, the market for New Zealand logs is bigger than the market for further processed products. So we're always going to be a log seller rather than a seller of finished timber. Yeah, but he was a bit quiet today, to be honest. Yeah, I think I think he's winding up for the weekend.
Yes, it's not getting a bit old for the outspoken carry on.
Actually, honestly, he's like ages. He's like Dracula. He just keeps bloody opening the coffin and coming out and turning up. You know, he's just got boundless energy. And I remember sort of an anecdote years ago when I go on the campaign trail. I met him at the Riccarton racecourse, and he was there. He wasn't in Parliament. He'd spent 3 years out, and this was the third year's election year. And I was interviewing people about just politics, and there he was. And he told me where he'd been. He'd been to every little tin pot place in the country, and I knew then he was going to get re-elected because he just campaigns under the radar a lot of times. Yeah. So.
He is quite an outspoken man. Is he fun to interview?
Well, I don't know whether fun's the right word. He always has me in absolute fits, but he never answers a question.
No.
Not ever.
That is the skill of a politician, though, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, he tells you what he wants to tell you, and you can ask him the same question several times. He's not the only one that does that, I have to say.
No. That is a skill. Yeah. Who's been the trickiest person you've ever interviewed?
Well, we have to go a long way back to the late Robert Muldoon. He was scary to interview. He really was. But all of them are pretty tricky. You know, they've just got these spin doctors now that they just keep turning the questions back. You know, you can never get them to actually give you an answer. So you walk away sometimes and your notebook's full of notes and they haven't said a thing. You know, it's just
circumlocution.
Yeah, it drives me crazy. It really does. Yeah.
Why was Robert Muldoon a bit scary?
Well, he just had this abrasive attitude about reporters. You know, and if he thought you were trying to wind him up, he just launched into you. You know, no, how's your father? He just gave it to you full. Yeah. And I never was in the press gallery in those days, but he used to just chuck people out of the press gallery, ban them from conferences and stuff, you know. It was
sounds entertaining.
Oh, well, entertaining was a good word for us, I suppose.
How many years have you been in this game?
Well, my first election campaign was 75, and I took a few years off, but I'm involved either in politics in every way, because my grandfather was a cabinet minister, so I came from a very political family, so I've just always been involved. So the first actual election I reported on was 75, but when I was at boarding school, a friend and I, whose grandfather was a cabinet minister as well, we started a political club at Waitaki Boys, and so in 72, you know, we were interviewing Norman Kirk and back in those days. So yeah, it's been fun. 75
was actually quite a momentous year because I was born then.
Oh really?
Yes.
So you were literally the red under the bed.
Possibly.
that Muldoon would talk about.
Is it more fun to write about politics or business?
Oh, I love politics. I really do. You know, I mean, it's I say this quite a bit. I get to write a lot about politics, but being a full-time political reporter is a lot of fun. But I mean, I think I'd get a bit stale if I had to deal with them, and that's why I like being business and politics, because they sort of interlink these days. So yeah, I can give one a rest and get stuck into the other. Yeah.
Which is more dangerous?
I think business in a way, because you have to be really on your toes in business. You know, like figures and those sorts of things. Politics, you can get away with a bit more comment. So you've got to be a bit more free-spirited in politics, but business you have to be pretty right on the button with them. But I like that. I like being pretty precise with the figures and stuff. And I know it sounds nerdish, but I like analysing company accounts because these days they just try and hide a lot of stuff. And one of the things I'm really good at is analysing financial accounts, so I like to give them a wee ring up and say, why did you do that particularly before you paid tax on that, or something like that, you know. Yeah, just give a bit of a wind up.
Don't have a look at my accounts.
No.
I'm a bit nervous about that. Now, speaking of money, the OCR is at its lowest point. Yeah. Why has my mortgage rate not plummeted? Well,
that's a really good question. I'm actually pleased you asked that, because I get that a bit actually when I'm out socialising or walking in my walking group. The reason is that the banks have decided that their margins are too slim right now, so they're just building slightly more of a margin in there. So that allows them to do their fixed rates, which of course ties you in to that bank for a certain amount of time. But yeah, they've decided, so a few of the smaller banks like SBS and maybe TSB Bank, they've taken the full hit, but the bigger banks, their margins are so tight that they're just going to take a wee bit of an advantage this time. And I think the OCR is going to drop maybe in November and they won't drop again.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll hold out till then.
I think if you can, you should.
Dene Mackenzie, ODT business editor, an all-round good guy. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. Yep.
Lovely. Thank you, Dene.